I'm back, baby! Welcome to the channel, everyone. So today we're talking about the Dresden Files. This one right here. This is one of my favorite book series out there. But as always, I'm not just telling you about my favorites, it's about pitching books to you so you can decide if you want to try reading them. So I avoid all spoilers, it's objective and just being unbiased. Today I'm just going to be your reporter, just going through, outlining some of the facts. You can decide if this is a series you want to try. So let's get straight into it. Harry Dresden is a private investigator working in Chicago. He's also a wizard. He's one of the only wizard for hires available in the world. He uses his investigation skills and his magical talents to solve crimes, both natural and supernatural. And that's kind of it. That's the whole concept. So it's a relatively simple concept, but it's an effective one. Sometimes the best stories are just really simple things to just done very well. So the Dresden Files is probably the reigning champion of the urban fantasy subgenre. So there are 17 novels in total and 2 collections of short stories. So it's not even finished yet either. So that's what makes the Dresden Files so impressive, because there's so many books, but it has maintained its popularity and its quality all the way through. Normally, if you find a series that's up in the 15, 20 book range, you start seeing, dodgy books getting thrown in there or books that are repeating plot lines. Not so. This series is fresh, constantly innovating and changing up the formula on a regular basis. So the Dresden Files is full of clever mysteries and beloved characters, but it's also just a lot of fun. That's my favorite thing about it. The series lets itself have a bit of tongue-in-cheek. It doesn't take itself too seriously. There's heaps of laugh-out-loud moments while reading it, and that's kind of a weird thing to say because the series is also pretty dark and gritty too. There's monsters and murders and even some light elements of horror. Now, it's by no means a horror series, but there's elements, like it draws from the horror vibe a little bit. And yet, even with all that darkness, it's still top quality humor. It's really one of the reasons why I enjoy rereading the series so much, because of just how fun it is. The Dresden Files has a huge cast of characters, as you might expect for a 17-novel series. But they're so beloved by the fandom, and I gotta emphasize this, the characters are literally the best part of the Dresden Files. I can't emphasize it enough. Jim Butcher's character writing is his greatest strength as a writer, and it really shines here. So we have wizards of the White Council, as well as charming succubus vampires, and noble paladins wielding holy swords, slaying demonic falling angels. We also have ghosts, werewolves, Bigfoot, and a humble mortician who spends his weekends entering one-man poker band competitions, because poker will never die. Now that might just sound almost like a D&D campaign, right? You got your wizards and your paladins and your knights and stuff, but it's so much more than that. Each of these characters really do have their own personality to go with it. So it's not just class type and then power level, right? They genuinely are people. Now, I really want to hammer this point home, because if I'm going to sell the series to you on any level, it's going to be the characters. And you know what really drives that point home? Character bios! Oh my God! Karen Murphy is a cop and the head of special investigations at Chicago PD, which means she gets all the weird cases, right? All the cases that no one else wants to deal with. So Karen is just over 5 feet tall. She's a little tiny, highly trained in martial arts and gung fu. So seriously, think like John Wick, okay? Murphy brings in Harry Dresden, the wizard, as a consultant every time she gets a case that doesn't quite fit what you would consider natural. Murphy is tough and loyal and deeply devoted to justice. And don't ever call her cute. Don't call me cute! Michael Carpenter. He is a Knight of the Holy Cross, so he's a deeply devout Catholic and father of 7, of course. Michael uses the holy sword Amarachius to fight creatures of a purely evil nature. Yet despite his powers as an incredible warrior, he's most known in the series for being the voice of wisdom. He encourages others towards kindness and compassion. Thomas Wraith is a succubus vampire of the White Court. So Thomas is charming, he's pretty, and everyone likes him. He's reckless, impulsive, he's that cute bad boy type figure. But all that charm hides a great darkness within him. Thomas has a vampiric demon living inside of him that is constantly hungry for the physical affection and the lust of everyone around him. Thomas's beauty is his curse, because Thomas craves affection, but he cannot physically touch anyone who he loves because it burns him. So he's quite a tortured character. Now that's just a few of the good guys. Let's look at some villains. Next we have Lara Wraith. She's the older sister of Thomas. Lara uses her incredible beauty and charm and her sharp wit to lie, cheat, and manipulate her way to the top of the White Court. She likes to rule from the shadows, cold and efficient and calculating. She is known to work with Dresden whenever their causes align, but only as long as those causes align. Next we have Mab, Queen of Air and Darkness, the Mother Fae of the Winter Court. So Mab is almost godlike in power level, alright? She's right at the top tier. Like all Fae, she is bound by her word. So everything she says is technically the truth. But any word that's spoken in her hearing has the power to be used against you, because Queen Mab always keeps her word and she will hold you to yours. Oh, here we go. Nicodemus Arcleon. Literally the most evil character in fiction. He holds one of the 30 silver denarius coins that were cursed after the betrayal of Christ. Now he wields a fallen angel that grants him immortality. This has given him over 2 millennia to perfect his swordplay and his physical skill, but far more dangerous than that is his mind. Nicodemus has studied human behavior for 2,000 years. He knows what you will do before you do. He can predict your every thought and action. And Nicodemus isn't interested in crime or murder. He wants to cause the apocalypse. Okay, well, I hope that has given you some sort of expectation on the character level here. Yet somehow I haven't even talked about Dresden himself. Dresden is easily the most rich and complex character within this whole thing. So Harry Dresden was orphaned at a young age, and he was adopted and raised by a dark wizard. And that dark wizard tried to corrupt him into his thrall and his servant. Harry was eventually able to break away from his dark master, yet he's never free of that darkness he carries within him. He likes to bend the rules if it means achieving the greater good, but it's that disregard for the rules that kind of drives him towards that more chaotic, unpredictable side. So Harry's a great protagonist to follow, but he's not an entirely trustworthy guy either. Dresden is also a chronic smartass. You could say Harry learned to cope from all the suffering in his childhood by making jokes and by being lighthearted and acting childish in serious situations. So he loves teasing everyone. Like, think of a little brother, like me, just poking at everyone, just like at friends and enemies alike, just teasing like crazy. So Harry is a delightful character to view the whole series through. He is both silly and capable of incredible depths of feeling as well. Oh, I love these characters. Can you tell? They're all my friends. Now, while these books are very much written as urban fantasy and heavy action novels, they are at their core crime novels. Let me explain. So these are like a classic James Patterson novel, or a Law and Order episode, or Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I don't know what crime shows kids are watching these days. Crime's such a boring genre, except this time because it's fantasy. Oh jeez. The point is, there's always a mystery that starts with the question. So who killed this couple with blood magic? Why did the tracks leading away from this dead body turn from beast into man? And why has several necromancers shown up in town just a few days before Halloween? And then you watch as Harry tracks down the leads. He pieces the clues together, starts forming a puzzle, and then bam! That shocking revelation where it all comes together and you realize every little clue all fit this complex puzzle. That's a very satisfying aspect of it. So if you're one of those people like me who love trying to guess the ending, this is a fantastic series for that. There are so many, whodunit questions as you try to piece it together. I actually love reading this. My wife reads it as well. When we went through the series, we enjoyed comparing who could figure it out first. Bit of a friendly competition. This is half the reason I love these series, because when the twist comes at the end, you realize that every single paragraph on the page before was setting up something. It's all relevant, and that's also why the series is really good for rereading, because you see all that foreshadowing and all those clues leading up to the big climactic reveal. It's one of the reasons why I've just started my third read-through of the series, from Stormfront to Battleground, because Battleground had a couple of clues. I was like, oh, I've got a theory about the whole thing, so I went back to the start and started reading through. So in a word, these books are intriguing. So you get a clue with that question that hooks you in and makes you want to read further into it. So there's always something new to explore and a new mystery to search out, and there are clues everywhere. It's a fun story for those who like to guess the ending. The first elephant in the room. You should know up front, this series is episodic mostly. Okay, so you don't have to read every single book in this series, okay? One at a time works really well. So Jim Butcher actually takes the time to reintroduce characters as they come back, or reintroduce plot points, right? And it's done every single time. So you could just randomly pick up a 7th book, and if there's something you've missed, there will be an explanation of it just to keep you up to date, okay? So you can read them in any order. That said, what you get in a series like this is a couple of plot threads that stretch over multiple books. A lot of those are about Harry's personal life, so his relationships with the people around him or his career, right? And Jim Butcher does an excellent job of balancing, making each story self-contained, but giving you little clues so it rewards readers who do stick with it all the way through. The second elephant, the series keeps improving. This series just gets better the longer it goes on. It's truly incredible. This is a major testament to Jim Butcher's skills as a writer, in that he's constantly improving. He practices his craft and develops his skill. There are so many authors out there who will find a formula to write a book that sells and makes money, and then just starts dishing out the same crap over and over again, using the same formula and basically just relying on their established popular name to sell the product from that point on, such as Terry Goodkind or Terry Brooks. Maybe Stephen King? We can debate that one. Jim doesn't do that, and it's one of the reasons I respect him as an author, is that each book is a little bit better than the last. The first time I read through the series, it constantly raised my expectations. I read book 3 and thought, wow, that was incredible. This is a genuinely fantastic series. Then I read book 4. Oh, this is my new favorite book. Then I read book 5. Oh, book 5, this is the best thing ever. And it just kept going like that. And then we got to book 12, which is, everyone says it's the best one. And then we got to book 15, which was the new best one. You get the idea. So this series is probably the biggest series I know of that's all written in first-person mode. So every chapter is written from Harry's perspective, and normally a first-person mode kind of restricts the size of your world. You can't have a world that's too big or experience too many different peoples and races and cultures from just one person's living experience. But over 17 novels, this world has grown to be staggering in size. So there is a bit of a formula to it. In every book, it introduces one more magical player into the world. So, for example, Book 1 introduces the concept of wizards. Book 2 is werewolves. Book 3 is ghosts and demons. Kind of. Okay? So that's kind of the rough outline it takes. And that does continue for a huge part of the way through the series, where each book is a new player. And because it's done one book at a time, it's very easy to follow and consume. And before you realize, you're like, wow, I actually know so much about this world. If you're wondering just how big, basically every urban myth and every folklore story is true to some degree. Another thing that I really like about the series, it'll be like, oh, by the way, you know that fairy tale? It's actually true, but it's just a little bit different, right? Because, that's how the mortals heard the story, the wizards heard it a little bit differently. So it's constantly bringing in, urban myths that you've probably heard about, like Bigfoot, but it's always with a very clever twist that makes it engaging to the story. The third elephant in the room. Okay, look, it's not that awful. I just get mad because the Dresden show is famous for being one of the most unfaithful adaptations ever. I have such a problem with that, as you might expect from a booktuber. The TV series has almost no similarities to the books whatsoever. They basically take the names and that's it. Nothing about it is similar. The show itself is not actually bad. It's not like, the TV show equivalent of M. Night Shyamalan's The Last Airbender. But the show is just mediocre. And in many ways, that's worse, right? You get how that's worse.
Everyone knows that's worse.
You see, I can understand changing the story because you've got to change it from the media of book to film. And sometimes it means you've got to change it to create a better product. But then to change it and to end up with blandness anyway, it's just insulting. My advice...
Son, just don't.
Representation, okay. So this is the tricky part. In all my videos, I talk about how that book series represents different peoples of race, gender, and sexual identity, and whether there is representation or not. This is the first time I've got to talk about representation that's done badly. Oh boy, time to get political. On the internet. Oh, great. Let's talk about the positives first. So the Dresden Files is packed filled with powerful women. There's a good 50-50 ratio of men and women throughout the series, and the women are very much treated as equals all the way through. So that's definitely a big plus. They get their fair share of plot lines, character arcs, and they're written as real people most of the time. And the series also does an excellent job of representing religion, if you're into that. So like the Holy Knights of the Cross do God's work on Earth and fight God's enemies. These characters also, they show a religious experience that is marked by kindness and forgiveness and acceptance. It's a nice change from, the more judgmental, power-hungry narcissists you see everywhere else. The series gets problematic when you start noticing the male gaze. So women's bodies are often described in great detail, and they're almost always sexualized. It's weird. So there are scenes in the second book, a man and a woman both walk into the room. The man is described by how he dresses and by his face and the look in his eyes. The woman is described by her hotness and her body type. Worse, every time a woman appears on screen, there is always, and I really do mean always, a specific mention of just how attractive she is. So it doesn't just say, oh, blue eyes and blonde hair. It says, oh, was she plain? Or was she cute? Or was she hot? Or would she be hot with makeup? Or was she a supermodel hotness? It's like at every point we have to know just how attractive Dresden is to this character. The fans of the series, we all kind of know this, right? And most fans will actually defend this by saying, well, that's because it's from Harry Dresden's perspective, right? Our protagonist in the series can be a bit of a womanizer, right? It's just a character perspective. But even if that's true, it can still be uncomfortable. I have heard people say that they picked up the first 2 books and there was too much of it and it made them uncomfortable. If you can push through it, I don't think that makes you a bad person, but you should be aware that that's there, right? And if it does make you uncomfortable, you're not overly sensitive, right? The whole reason I'm pitching these books to you is so you can make up the call and you can choose for yourself. The next issue is that there is virtually no LGBT rep whatsoever. And that happens in some stories, but it's particularly weird in this. I mean, there's almost like there's work done to avoid mentioning LGBT people altogether. I mean, there's such a wide range of immortal creatures and species in this world. There should be a ton of queer stuff. I mean, there's the White Court of vampires. They're all succubus, right? They get their power from lust. You cannot tell me that every single one of them is not pansexual and they're all attracted to everything and anyone, right? Like, I refuse to believe it. But no, the story kind of goes out of its way to make sure you know none of that is happening. The only LGBT rep you actually see is girl-on-girl sex. And yeah, that's kind of the worst kind of rep, isn't it? It's kind of like, oh, queer people can exist as long as they're attractive to cis men. Like, right? It just feels problematic, doesn't it? I mean, there is a scene where someone straight up addresses homosexuality to Harry, and Harry goes, oh, I'm fine with it. So, don't worry, it's fixed now. So why am I making a big deal about this? Simple. If we don't actively work to create a space for LGBT people in this world, there won't be a space, right? There's nothing worse for a person's mental health to feel as though there is no place in this world for you. So we've got to talk about this stuff and make it relevant every time. It's also worth noting here, the third and final of these problems I'm going to bring up is there are ongoing threads of unhealthy masculinity. So there's a lot of guys who are afraid to talk about their feelings. There are guy friends who get defensive if people assume that the guys are a couple. And generally, there's just men trying to act tough all the time. Which, it's realistic, that happens a lot, but it's also kind of dumb because, guys have emotions just like everyone else, and denying your emotions is not healthy. Take care of your mental health, boys. It's important. So I want to put all of that out there in the open, okay? So the Dresden Files, as I've said, it's really a terrific series. It's well written, and it's a lot of fun, and I hope I've made it clear just how much I personally like it. But there are problems with how it represents people. It's important to keep that in mind. So I'm not going to tell you what to do about it. Remember, I'm just giving you the information. It's your call. As I've said, if this doesn't bother you, go ahead. I don't think it makes you a bad person if it doesn't bother you, okay? Everyone has different life experiences. And if you don't want to read it for these reasons, that's fine with as well. You're not overly sensitive for it. All I want to do is make you aware of these issues. I want to give you things to think about and bring it to your attention so that you can decide what to do with it, what you will. Just be aware.
Do you mean woke?
I did mean woke, but it's grammatically incoherent.
This is one very readable series. This is my go-to recommendation for a lot of people, especially if I have a friend who says, I haven't read books in months or years. I say, read the Dresden Files. You know why? Well, because all the other series I've recommended on my book channel so far are like heavy fantasy books that have like 1,000 pages per book, or really long series. These, the first couple books, are fewer than 300 words. They're very short, they're very quick, and they're not a heavy slog to read through. So if you're trying to get back into the habit of reading regularly, I cannot recommend this enough. It's such an easy read. It's so easy to pick up. The language is concise and simple. It's a great time. So if you're trying to get back into a reading habit, this is a really good series to try. All right, so we're going to do a parent's guide again. So this series can be dark at times. So as I've said, it's not a horror series. It's not a grim dark series, but there's lots of monsters that eat people's faces. No biggie. So there are a couple of soft sex scenes, nothing too explicit, but it also doesn't fade to black and allude to it as well. They are shown on screen. There's also a lot of sexualized characters. So like every vampire and every fae is like stupidly hot all the time. Okay, so get prepared for that. There is one book where Harry has to investigate a crime that occurred on an adult film set. So lots of, talk about that. Personally, I think that's incentive to read it, but no, that's a parent's guide. It's everyone's choice. There is a ton of violence. Now, it's not gore violence, it's action violence, okay? So think of it like a Marvel action movie where stuff gets blown up and set on fire and explosions and big punches, right? That's about it. The ending. Okay, this series is unfinished. So unlike the other book series I've recommended, I can't tell you if the ending is worth it just yet. I can tell you the series does keep getting better. The most recent novel at the time of filming is Battleground, and Battleground was fantastic and I really loved it. I definitely think it was one of the most action-heavy pieces of fiction I've ever read. It was like 400 pages straight of just action scenes. It was great. But for now, I can say the books do keep getting better the further into the series you go. So it's still worth getting into it. And who knows, maybe I'll be able to do a Dresden Files reintroduction series in a few years, once the rest of the series is up, right? It's tough to pick a favorite book because my favorite constantly changed reading it through. And even now, I guess the book I'm reading is usually my favorite at the time. If it gives you an idea, I'll put it in groups of 5. So out of the first 5 books, book 3, Grave Peril, and book 5, Death Masks, were my favorite. And then of the next 5, so 6 to 10, book 7, Deadbeat, and book 8, Proven Guilty. And then in the next 5, Changes and Skin Game. They were definitely the best too. And then, of course, Battleground, because, there's only 2 of... Anyway. So comment below and fight me on my choices. You tell me why I'm wrong. Ding, ding, let's do this. So to get started on this series, you should know almost everyone agrees the first 2 books are not the best. Okay, they're decent. I enjoy them. I don't skip them when I reread the series. But book 3, everyone agrees that's when the series takes off. All right, it gets good at that point. So if you read the first 2 books and you're not sure if this is really your thing, you should read book 3 as well. That is a better sampling of true quality. Also, if you're not a fan of that male gaze stuff I talked, a lot of that's in the first 2 books. It kind of eases a little bit from book 3 onwards, but it's still there. It's just not as intense. You could also skip to book 3. I'm just saying. You could. I mean, the series can be picked up anywhere, right? Don't hate me. Well, that's it. That's the Dresden Files. Now, I hope I have convinced you to give it a go and to read it, and that you have an amazing time enjoying it. But I also hope I've made you aware of some of the bigger issues the series has, so you can notice that in other books you read as well. Check out the other videos on my channel where I pitch a couple of other book series to you, and as always, remember, reading is something to be enjoyed, alright? We should treasure reading, celebrate reading, and read whatever you like, not what other people tell you to. That's why I'm not telling you what to read, I'm just telling you what these books are about in case you want to try it. And also be honest with yourself about what you enjoy and only read the books that genuinely interest you. So you can support this channel if you want to by going to our shop. So other channels have a Patreon, but I don't do that. I actually want you to get something in return for giving money, right? So check out the shop Rainbow Space Unicorn for magical accessories, and then you can also check out my wife's Redbubble account. It's in the description, and you can get some of her designs printed on a range of products like t-shirts, mugs, and bedspreads, whatever floats your boat. You can also buy this shirt. Huh? Yeah? You like that? Yeah, you like that. If you're curious about other book series, you should comment below. I might have read it. I might be considering doing an introduction video on it, alright? So tell me what other series you'd like to talk about, and then do the YouTube stuff where you like and subscribe to the video, and enjoy a good book today. Alright, thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.